holidays are coming, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of apples going around. So today I'm going to show you how to make an apple pie. I'll show you two ways: the American apple pie and the French apple pie. Let's get started. For the crust, you need 2 cups all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, you may omit, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup shortening, 1/2 cup of cold butter you cut into cubes, 1/3 to 1/2 cup of water. For the filling of the apple pie, you need about 6 cups of apples, about 5 to 6 pieces depending on the size of the apple, 2 tablespoons calamansi or lemon juice, 3/4 to 1 cup of sugar. You can use white or you can use brown or you can use a combination, 2 tablespoons butter, 1 teaspoon cinnamon powder, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/4 cup of cassava or tapioca starch or cornstarch. For the streusel, you need 3/4 cup of flour, 1/3 cup of white sugar, 1/3 cup of cold butter cube. Let's make the crust. I have here flour, sugar, salt. Baking powder, as I said, is optional. The reason I put baking powder, because for me, it lightens the crust, meaning when you bite into it, it's not so tough, it's not so hard. Some people swear by vinegar. They put 1 teaspoon vinegar. That's also alright to use. So you mix this together, and then you add in the shortening and the butter. You add in the shortening, and then the butter, you cut them into cubes. They should be cold. You can put this in the mixer, but I will show you how to mix this by hand because some of you do not have a KitchenAid mixer. Okay, what I do is I use my hands. But if you have a pastry blender, you can use a pastry blender. What you do is you rub it. If you have very warm hands, use a pastry blender. You know what some people do? They also chill the flour. So remember, butter melts at body temperature. So if you touch it with your hands and your hands are warm, the butter will melt. All right. If you have a KitchenAid mixer, again, you can just put this in the mixer. I'm just breaking the butter into smaller pieces. You can use refrigerated margarine instead of butter, but butter has, of course, a more superior quality when it comes to flavor. It's just more difficult to handle because it melts in your hands. Okay, so here this is fine. When it looks like a pulburon mix, do not worry if you can still see big clumps of butter, because what happens when we roll them out, they will flatten. Okay, a few more strokes, and then we add in the water. Water is variable. Okay, don't add. See, this is what we call a pulburon test. When you press it, it forms everything sticks together. Use cold water. Okay, add the water gradually. Don't add all of the water at one time because it's also dependent on the consistency of your, the temperature of your butter. Okay, I didn't add all of the water because see, I have enough that it will bind. The next thing you need to do is you just press this. Don't knead this like you need bread. Don't do that because then your crust will be very tough. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm trying to pick up the extra flour. The flour which has not, binded. So this is done. It does not have to be smooth. The next thing you need to do is you have to make this, you have to rest the dough, because if you don't rest the dough, what happens? The dough will shrink when you bake this. Okay, so this is good. We cover this in plastic For the streusel, this is if you want to make a French apple pie. The American apple pie is the one with a flour crust in the bottom and the top. The French apple pie has a bottom crust, however it has a streusel topping, okay? So I'm going to show you both today, the American and the French apple pie. So I have flour, sugar, and then we have cold butter. Alright. Some would add some nuts if they like, some walnuts. Okay. You cut this in. You can use a pastry blender, or you can just do this, or you can use a knife. Dull knife or a fork. We don't want to touch this with our hands because our hands are warm. They might clump up and it will be a little difficult to spread them out. When that happens, all you have to do is put this back in the refrigerator, and then it will be easier for you to use again. You can also do this, the fork method, with the pie crust. If you don't want to touch it with your hands, or if your hands are warm. Okay, here. This is your streusel. This is done now. It's not supposed to clump up, okay? You're just supposed to coat the butter with the flour. Alright, so this is it. Okay, I'll set this aside. Oh, by the way, this is a pastry blender. You use a pastry blender like this, okay? So you can use your hands, you can use a spatula, you can use a dull knife, you can use a fork, or you can use a pastry blender, whatever you have. Alright, let's set this aside. This is how the streusel should look like. Just in case they clump together, you can just put them in the refrigerator, and once they're chilled, you can break them up. There are two ways of making the apple filling. You can put them directly into the pie crust, but I like to cook my apple filling because I find it less watery. But whatever you're comfortable with, you can do that. And then we have your sugar. You can use between 3/4 to 1 cup sugar. It's up to you on the sweetness level that you want. Then we have nutmeg, cinnamon, lemon juice to balance the sweetness. And then this is the cassava or tapioca starch. You can also use cornstarch. You can also use flour. Please toss it gently because we don't want the apples to be mushy. So please handle it gently. You just toss it. We allow it to boil so that the sugar will dissolve and the juices from the apples will come out, and then once it boils, it will blend with the starch to thicken the sauce. Okay. Some chop the apples, some slice them. Whatever you're happy with, it's all right. Here, see. By the way, the reason I use tapioca or cassava starch is once it cools down, or once you refrigerate, cornstarch has a tendency to become watery, but you cannot find that in cassava or tapioca starch. You can, as I said, you can also use flour. Okay, I'm going to add in butter. You can double the butter if you want. Okay. I'm trying to concentrate the sugar a little bit so it's not very watery. Alright, maybe 2 or 3 minutes more, and then this is ready. And we will prepare the pie crust. Alright, this one is good. I don't want to cook it further because the apples will become very, very soft. Okay, so this is good. So let's shut this off. Here I have 2 sheets of plastic. You sprinkle this generously with flour. I divided the dough into 2, one for the bottom crust, one for the top. Okay, press this down and then put flour on top too. Cover with another plastic. This is just to make it easy for you. You know, you can make a pie crust without butter, just with shortening. It's easier to work with, but the one with the butter has better flavor, of course. And it has, the crust is not as tough, though the shortening will give you a flakier crust. Okay, I'm trying to make this as round as possible, so I'm turning the plastic. But for instance, like this, you will see this portion is like kulang, so all you have to do is just patch this. Okay, so you get a round shape again. Remember, when you roll, always from the center going out. And you know, my guide is the paper. I cut the paper according to how big I want the crust to be. Okay, many people ask me how I remove. This is not a disposable pie plate. This is an aluminum pie plate, which you can use again and again. If it's a disposable one, you don't have to worry, but this one, you need to remove it from the pan. If you are careful, you don't need to put anything here in the pan, okay? But for recipes like this, where sometimes the filling boils while it cooks, and then it goes under the crust, what happens? It will stick. So it's difficult to remove. So I have a little trick. I put a small sheet of paper here. This is baking paper, okay? I don't do that to all the, well, I don't do it to most of mine, but I was just looking for ways that will make it easy for you, okay? So like this. Okay, the paper's here, right? Okay. And then hold this and turn it over like this. All right. For instance, there are parts here like this is a little bit short, this is a bit too long. Remember, I told you you can always patch it. Okay. And then this one, I'll put a little flour. I think the butter was in this part. Alright, for the filling, I made two recipes. This, because I'm going to show you two versions. Okay. One, I'm going to make the French apple pie. One is the American pie. Okay. For the French apple pie, you just put the bottom crust same way as this one, but I did not flute the American because I need to put the cover. This one, I need to flute it. Okay. So like this, I will divide this into two portions. Okay, I'm not very sure if they have the same amount, but I would say more or less they look the same to me. Okay, let's do the French apple pie first. This is easier. Remember the streusel? All you have to do is put the streusel on top. Okay, make sure you put here on the sides because when you bake, this is going to boil. Because as much as possible, we don't want the filling to go under the crust because it will be difficult to remove. But then we have a little insurance, the paper. I will show you after we cool this down how I actually remove this, okay? So this is the French apple pie. And of course, they serve a slice of this with ice cream. Okay, so it's like that. This is your French apple pie version. And then we bake this, okay? Now for this one, for the American apple pie version, here, don't press it down, okay? It's, you know, rustic. That's a little bit irregular. You'll see some holes later. And here, you brush the sides with water. Some people say it's not really very important. I agree. Especially if your dough is not very dry. But then, you know, it's just good practice to put. But if you seal it well, you don't have to. Okay, this is the top. Same dough. Remember, I divided it into half. By the way, I made another dough just for this one. Another crust just for this one, okay? This one is the one we made. Alright, here. So, This is why I like to use plastic because, sorry, it's very convenient, very easy. Sorry about that. Okay, you tuck this under. Okay, this one. Put two together and tuck. And then let's smooth this out. I'm going to move this because this portion is a little bit thick. You know, if you did what I did earlier, if you roll it out earlier, please keep it in the refrigerator. That's why it became very soft, because I rolled it out way too early and I just kept it here on the table. Okay, but as I said, it's all right. You dip your hands in flour and do this to float. Put two fingers and push it with the other one. Of course, if you don't know how to do this, you can always use a fork, okay? So like this. And next thing you need to do is, you need to brush this with, by the way, if you have more apples, you can mount this up. You brush it with milk or with egg. I don't have any more eggs, so I will just use milk. And then here on the sides, I just do that, one round. Okay, not too much, because the ends brown very quickly. And as much as possible, I don't want any milk coming here because it's going to stick. Then after that, always make a cut, because you know when you heat this, it's going to be very hot inside. So you need to release some of the steam so that it does not boil over. And do not be surprised if some of the juices ooze out. That's normal, okay? So we put this in a 375-degree oven. This one will probably bake a little bit shorter than this one. About 45 minutes. This one we will try to check after 35 minutes, okay? I have many recipes to share with you. If you're interested, please like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you can be alerted when a new video is uploaded. Here are our apple pie. This is the American style. This is the French apple pie version. We have to wait for this to cool down before we unmold and slice, because in fruit pies, the filling is very runny when it's hot. Alright, this is our apple pie. We baked this yesterday. It has cooled down, and we will see how we can take this out, okay? So, slowly. It should not be difficult to take out. Okay. Alright, you know, it helps. Remember I told you my little trick? I put a small sheet of parchment paper, okay? By the way, you can bake this browner if you want to, okay? And then the other one, the French, oh, this is easier. And then, oh, the paper is here. So, let's slice it. You can cut this with a regular knife. I just like to use the electric knife. Here is our apple pie.